We are live. What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights, coming at you from the Never Hedge Media YouTube channel. Before we get started, gang, go ahead and take a second to like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the Never Hedge Media YouTube channel. If you enjoy my content, also please make your way over to the Erik Bets Fights YouTube channel and subscribe there. I believe I do have the link, and my other links for Twitter and Instagram and that sort of thing should be in the description down below here. This is going to be my full card betting breakdown for UFC Long Island, which is coming up this weekend, Saturday. Well, I don't know, is it the 16th or so? I'm not sure if that's the right date. But anyway, headlined by Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. Before we jump into those breakdowns, we're going to do a quick recap of how my bets went from the last event, which was the Battle of the Rafaels Dos Anjos versus Fiziev. I'm not going to go through every single bet because I did have quite a few little props and that sort of thing, but I'm just going to give you kind of an overall recap in general. We did pick up 3.23 units on that event, which that puts us at 3 winning events in a row. And in those 3 winning events, we've won a little over 12 units at 32% ROI. So on kind of a nice little run here. Hopefully we can keep that going. My biggest money line bet last week was 5 units on Rafael Fiziev, so luckily he did come through for us there. I also had 2 units on Said Nurmagomedov. I never know how to say that name for sure. I put half a unit on Chase Sherman at plus 175, and I put 1 unit on David Onama at minus 750. I don't usually bet those big crazy money lines like that, but that was a situation where I felt confident in Onama, and I was like, man, am I really going to put 1 unit on a minus 750 bet? But I calculated and it was 13% ROI. So I thought, like, well, if you're playing the stock market and you're getting like 8%, that's pretty good. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and just pick up the 13. I was confident enough in him winning that I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and pick up that 13% ROI rather than leaving the money on the table. The fight was a little sweaty at times. So there, I was in danger of losing that unit, but luckily it worked out. I also had a parlay of Fiziev and Nurmagomedov together for 2 units. I parlayed Bohalio and Tercios, and I also bet 3 units on Tercios. That was just ugly. My read on the fight was that he was going to come forward, he was going to be busier, he was going to be more aggressive. That was all true. However, what I was not counting on was him only landing 15% of his strikes. So that was, I've never seen anything quite like that before. So yeah, Ricky Tercios did what he was supposed to do, except for actually landing the punches he was throwing. So that was problematic. One of my favorite bets on the card was Said Nurmagomedov, whatever, by decision at plus 245. So we won that one. I also bet Nurmagomedov versus Silva de Andrade to go the distance. We won that one. I bet Sherman by KO, TKO at plus 340. We won that one. I bet Sherman's money line. I bet Sherman by KO TKO. And if you watch my Thursday night show, Big Money Bets, that I do on the Erik Bets Fights YouTube channel every Thursday night, there's a part of that show where we give out our favorite props. We start with the smallest money prop and work our way up to the biggest. My biggest money prop last week, I think it was plus 1,500, maybe plus 1,700, one of those two, I forget. But it was Chase Sherman by KO in round 3. And what happened? Chase Sherman by KO in round 3. So I think that was the first time I've ever hit my biggest prop on the show. So I was pretty excited about that. One last thing to say about this before we move on. If Michael Johnson had won that decision, I would have picked up almost 2 units total almost 10 units total on this event. And, I'm not going to cry robbery. It was a close fight, but I do think you can definitely make a case for Michael Johnson having won that fight. A lot of people seem to feel that way. I think if you go to MMAdecisions.com, most of the folks that put their scores in there also feel that way. Because, yeah, I had 1 unit on Michael Johnson money line straight up at plus 202. And then a little bit later, I saw him at plus 208, and I was like, oh man, he's getting even better. I put half a unit down. So I had a unit and a half on his money line. I also had 0.3 units on him to win by KO at plus 325. And then I sprinkled 0.1 unit on KO round 2 and 1 unit on KO round 3. And this isn't something I do very often, but I parlayed 2 underdogs together and I almost won it. I parlayed Sherman and Johnson together for half a unit at plus 719. Sherman came through for us. If Johnson would have won that decision, I would have hit a parlay of 2 underdogs, which would have been pretty cool. So yeah, with those money line bets, well, even without him, he went to decision, obviously, even without those TKO bets, if just the money line bet would have hit and then it would have hit that Sherman Johnson parlay, we would have picked up another almost 7 units and would have ended up with like a 10 unit event, which would have been, I think the most I've ever won on an event is like 9.35 or something. So Michael Johnson getting that decision would have made this my biggest event of all time. But even without it, we still picked up 3.23 units, and I am feeling pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and move on to this breakdown. We're going to be testing my my old man abilities with tech as we move through here, because I'm going to try to share my screen and show you the tab, show you topology as I'm going through these. But that means I also have I wish I had 3 monitors. I'm also going to be attempting to look at my notes and keep StreamYard up and share my screen. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right. So first of all, let's see. Add to stream. Hey, there it is. Hopefully that's big enough that you can see it. So yeah, the first fight of the night is going to be Jessica Penne versus Emily Ducote in the strawweight division. I'm not going to read through all of their records and height and that all of that sort of thing, but I will take a look at the betting odds. And the odds, I'm just going to use the Tapology odds here since they're in front of me, but you can probably get better odds than these if you look on bestfightodds.com. These might not be the best odds that are out there, but Emily Ducote is a slight favorite at -135. Comeback on Jessica Penne at +115. This is a fight. I'm not going to say I have a real strong read on it, and it's one of those spots where each fighter is in a fadeable position, right? So that's why it's tough to know. When you're looking at certain narratives, it's tough to know whether to take them into account in your capping at all. And if you do, how much weight do you put on those things, right? Because it's a situation where, sometimes people talk about the Contender Series fade. Emily Ducote is not a Contender Series fighter, but it's still the same sort of situation. Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast, he talks about the Contender Series fade a lot, and the way he treats it is, if a Contender Series fighter is making their debut against a UFC veteran, and that Contender Series fighter is favored over the veteran, you bet that veteran at the underdog odds. And that's what we've got here. Even though, like I said, she's not Contender Series, it's still a really big step up in competition for Emily Ducote. I didn't really know who Emily Ducote was when I did her tape. And then when I got to the Danielle Taylor fight, I saw that knockout and I was like, oh, it's her. Okay, I remember, because that was a pretty viral knockout. If you haven't seen it, definitely look up Emily Ducote versus Danielle Taylor, because it's an awesome knockout. One of the best knockouts I've seen in a while. But anyway, Ducote, she's mostly a striker. She does have a wrestling background. She is a BJJ black belt, but she does mostly look to strike. One of the things that I noticed about her game that I really liked is she's a very economical striker. She's very efficient. She keeps her game pretty tight. She keeps her game pretty buttoned up. She doesn't throw a lot of unnecessary strikes. She kind of just waits for her openings. Like, I don't know what her actual striking percentage is, because I don't know if that's even, tracked in smaller organizations like in Invicta and stuff like that. Maybe it is, but just from the eye test anyway, she looks like she has a pretty high striking percentage, just because she waits for the openings to be there, doesn't throw a lot of unnecessary strikes. She throws accurately. She picks her spots. But yeah, she does mostly look to strike, even though she is a capable wrestler and on paper, a capable BJJ fighter. I only watched 3 of her fights, so I don't know much about what she's done, earlier in her career. But this is a big step up in competition. I mean, Jessica Penne was gone from the organization for quite a while, didn't fight for quite a while. I think she had some USADA stuff going on, but I can't remember for sure. And then she came back, and she is 39 years old, which is a bit of a concern, but she's looked good since coming back, right? So it's like, do we fade the Emily Ducote's 28? When a fighter is 10 years or more younger, they win, like, I wish I could remember the exact percentage. It's over 60% of the time, but I think it's less than 70. I think it's somewhere in the 60s, but they do win a lot of the time. But there's also the fact that she's coming up, stepping up in competition here against a tried and true veteran like Jessica Penne, who fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk back in the day, who has fought some big names. Emily Ducote's biggest name that she's fought would be probably Juliana Lima, and she did beat her. But it was if I remember, I did watch that fight. I don't remember the details really well, but I think it was a pretty close fight if I remember correctly. Yeah, I'm staying away from this fight for the moment, but this is a spot where I think, if that line gets any better, Tapology is showing Penne at +115. If that line gets better, I would potentially look at a bet on Jessica Penne, because I do like her skill set here. She's not necessarily a great wrestler, but she's the kind of fighter who she doesn't even necessarily need the takedown. She'll clinch up with you and try to scramble to your back just from a clinch, scramble to your back while you're standing and that kind of thing. I think Ducote will probably have the upper hand in the striking, although Penne can hold her own there as well. But even though Ducote herself is a black belt, we've seen levels to the black beltdom, right? Like there are fighters who are black belts who, Jared Vandera being a BJJ black belt, for example. There are fighters who are BJJ black belts who don't appear to have a lot of ability on the ground. So, and we know that Penne does. So anyway, I've blabbed about that fight long enough. Let's go ahead and move on to the next fight on the card. We've got Dwight Grant versus Dustin Stoltzfus. This fight's taking place at middleweight. Grant is the favorite at -165. Comeback on Stoltzfus is +140. This is a fight where I came away from the tape feeling like, basically my thought was this. I think that this should be Dustin Stoltzfus' fight to win if he looks to push the grappling. So like if you told me, Dustin Stoltzfus has been putting the singlet on, he's been wrestling in camp, and I didn't check his Instagram. Maybe there are pictures of him with the singlet on. I'm kidding, but yeah, if there was inside info that Stoltzfus was absolutely planning to wrestle and grapple here, I would probably bet him at that +140, because I think if he looks to push the wrestling and grappling, he should be able to win this fight. I just don't know how much I trust him to push it, And Dwight Grant, I don't think super highly of Dwight Grant's skill set, but the guy obviously he's a good striker. He's a powerful striker, and he's got that striking physique, right? He's got a tiny little torso and long limbs. It's like the perfect body to be born with to be a kickboxer, right? Except for leg kicks, I guess. He's got very long legs, so you can kick the heck out of those legs. But yeah, and I also wonder, and this is just me coming up with a narrative that is probably made up in my head, but Stoltzfus has had, I think he's lost all 3 of his UFC fights so far, if I'm not mistaken, and he has had a pretty tough go. He's gone up against some pretty tough gauntlet of competition since coming into the UFC. So I also wonder on the narrative tip if this isn't the UFC giving him a winnable fight. Like I don't have any inside info on that or anything. That's just kind of something I was thinking, but. Yeah, and Grant being a good kickboxer, like I said, and Stoltzfus's striking has come along, but he also can get sucked into wild exchanges. He can kind of get lost in the moment and just be swinging big hooks with his chin up in the air, which could spell disaster against a guy like Dwight Grant. So yeah, on the feet, Stoltzfus could be in trouble, but if you look at the wrestling game he showed against Gerald Meerschaert, eventually that cost him, because you don't necessarily want to be on top of Gerald Meerschaert because he's excellent off of his back, and he did get the sub there. I actually bet Meerschaert by sub in round 3 in that one. So like I said, that Sherman KO round 3 was a prop that I hit. Gerald Meerschaert by sub in round 3 was probably the last time I hit one of those big props, and that was quite a while ago. But anyway, that's not the point. But yeah, Stoltzfus showed a good top game, good top control there. So yeah, I don't know if +140. If that number on Stoltzfus got even a little bit better, I would potentially look at a bet there, but I think I'm going to stay away from it for now. Next fight, we've got Dustin Jacoby versus Da-Un Jung. Jacoby is the slight favorite at -140. Da-Un Jung can be had as the dog for +120. This is a fight that seems to be like Da-Un Jung is a pretty popular underdog from what I've seen on Twitter so far. And I'm no exception. I did bet on Da-Un Jung here. After I finished the tape, I was kind of expecting to see Jung as a small favorite, and then I pulled it up and saw him at +125, so I did go ahead and jump on that. After hearing some other thoughts and thinking about some other things, I'm not feeling as great about that bet as I was when I placed it, but I'm kind of an impulsive guy. I kind of just go for it. Like if I run the tape, I do that style where I do the tape not knowing what the odds are, and then I set the odds in my head and then pull up the real odds and compare to see if there's value there. Every so often I'll see something where I think there's value, but I'm not really that confident. So I'll kind of wait to hear some other thoughts and stuff before I make the bet. But a lot of the time, if I pull it up and I see something that I like, I'll just go for it. And this was a spot where I was expecting Jung to be favored, and he was an underdog. So I went for it. And a big part of the reason why I like Jung in this spot is because he showed in the William Knight fight, he attempted 9 takedowns and he got 8 of them. Outside of that fight, he's only attempted 4 takedowns total in UFC competition. So he's not typically a guy who looks to wrestle. However, he showed some pretty good body lock and trip takedowns in that fight. And if you think about, if you're fighting William Knight, what's the danger in fighting William Knight, right? The guy he's a massive ball of muscle who's going to throw huge haymakers at you and try to knock you out. So clearly Jung understood in that situation, wrestling is going to be my best bet here against this guy so I don't get clocked. So I think he should, took him down 8 times. That's showing, to me, that's showing pretty good fight IQ. That's understanding the assignment and doing what you need to do. Against Dustin Jacoby, who's a former Glory kickboxer, I'm hoping that Jung is going to look to do the same thing. He hasn't typically wrestled, but he showed in that fight that he will wrestle when he feels it's his best path to victory. I'm hoping he feels that way here and looks to take down Jacoby. Jacoby doesn't have great takedown defense. It's decent, I guess. But, if Jung really looks to push those body locks and push those trips, I think he can probably have some success with that. And also, even if it does play out on the feet, Jacoby is definitely the more credentialed kickboxer, the more technical kickboxer, but he's not super defensively responsible a lot of the time. He does kind of leave his hands low. He does kind of leave his chin up. He is definitely hittable, and Jung hits very, very hard. And Jung is also a guy who will apply pressure. He likes to keep his opponents close to the cage circling. He likes to cut them off, be the one who's pressuring. And I think Jacoby's a guy who as a former kickboxer, he's a guy who likes to be given the space to work to get his game going. And I think Jung isn't going to allow him to have that space. So I think that could work in Jung's favor as well. So I did bet Jung here. I actually bet him kind of big. I think I put 3 units on him, which 3 units on an underdog it's a little scary. But like I said, I thought he was going to be, I was expecting him to be like minus 140, minus 150, something like that. So I took that plus 125. So hopefully that comes through for us. You guys, I was going to try to get through this video quickly, and I'm blabbing a lot more than I was planning to, but I'm going to try to speed it up a little. Just 1 second. I'm going to take a drink. All right. Next up, we've got Bill Algeo versus Herbert Burns. Algeo is favored in this fight at minus 170. Come back on Herbert Burns at plus 145. I've seen Herbert Burns as high as plus 170, and that's starting to become a line that interests me a little bit. I do favor Algeo here, but I would take, I'm a guy who plays the value. I'm a guy who plays the lines. Some people do the just pick who you think's going to win and bet on them. That's not really the way I roll. I pay attention to the lines, and if Burns got much higher than where he's at right now, I might be willing to take a shot on him, but I have not done it yet. Here's my overall kind of thoughts on this fight. Algeo, he's a solid offensive wrestler, but he's not a very good defensive wrestler. He doesn't have very good takedown defense. He can get taken down almost at will by somebody with decent wrestling. He does have a good get up game though. He's very scrambly. He's one of those guys who's he's just it's hard to describe. He's hard to get a hold of. He's always kind of moving. He's got kind of an awkward, unorthodox style. He scrambles well. He's just a little bit unpredictable, a little bit weird with his movement. It kind of makes me think of Keith Jourdain. He's not a similar fighter to Keith Jourdain, but Keith Jourdain was one of the first fighters that I remember that always kind of being the narrative behind him is he's hard to figure out because he just has weird, unorthodox movement. And Algeo is a little bit like that. And he's just one of those, he's one of those kind of thin, wiry, really scrappy guys who's just hard to control and hard to hold down, That said, Ricardo Ramos took Algeo down 8 times in their fight, and he did it largely with body lock trip type takedowns. And Herbert Burns is quite good at those kinds of takedowns. Herbert Burns is especially dangerous in the first round, and the same with Algeo. These are both guys who, in various ways, their game can kind of fall apart as the fight goes on. Algeo is a guy who he does tire, he does slow down. He'll sometimes even slow down noticeably by the end of round 1. However, he's a guy who does fight through exhaustion pretty well. It's not like he death gasses, but he slows down a lot, and his punches there's not much snap on his punches anymore. By the time he's in round 2, he's throwing punches like he's in molasses, or like he's throwing punches in the swimming pool or something. Like, he's still going for it. He's still trying, but he just doesn't have much on him anymore. And Herbert Burns is a guy, I think he's a dude, he's a little bit of a classic, like good hammer, not such a good nail. He, as soon as things start to not go his way, he can kind of fall apart a little bit. Burns is also a guy, kind of like the same thing I said for Jessica Penne. He's also a guy who he does have good takedowns, but he'll also just scramble to your back from a clinch. He doesn't even care if he gets a takedown. Like he'll use strikes to close the distance, and once he gets to your body, he'll just be looking to climb you like a tree and get up on your back and look for the choke standing there. But yeah, I do, like I said, I do have a hard time getting a really comfortable read on this fight, just because these guys are both a little bit unpredictable and a little bit prone to having their games kind of fall apart as the fight goes on. And I do think Burns will be able to get takedowns, but like I said, Algeo is pretty hard to hold down. He's pretty scrambly. Yeah, it's going to be a stay away from me right now, but I think Burns, like especially early, like Burns is a guy who can, he can get the takedowns early. We have seen Algeo get put in, like against Ricardo Hamosh, we've seen Algeo get put in difficult positions with good grapplers and be able to survive those spots. So I don't know that Burns is going to be able to find a sub here, and he might be reliant on the sub. It's hard to imagine Burns winning a decision here, as like I said, both their games tend to kind of fall apart, but Algeo shows that he will fight hard through all 15 minutes, and I don't know that I trust Burns to do that. I'm kind of just blabbing at this point because I'm kind of talking through, figuring out where I'm at on this fight exactly. But yeah, it's a stay away for me right now. But man, if I get that plus 170 on Burns is a little bit tempting, and if it gets much better than that, I might have to think about it. But it's going to be a stay away from me right now. Next up, we've got Ricky Simone versus Jack Shore, and this fight, ladies and gentlemen, is not a stay away for me. Jack Shore, I am impressed by Jack Shore. I mean, the dude's 16-0. He's, how many UFC fights has he had now? Sorry, I don't have his record in front of me. Has he had like 5 UFC fights already? He's undefeated, obviously, in his whole career and in the UFC, and he's looked good doing so. His last fight was Timur Valiev. He showed some good things in that fight. Also showed there were moments where Valiev was getting the better of it, but Jack Shore definitely was the better fighter in that fight overall. Jack Shore is currently the favorite at minus 165. Come back on Ricky Simone at plus 140. I do have a bet on Ricky Simone here. This is one I sat on for a while. I got him at plus 150, and I only took it for 1 unit. I came out of the tape kind of expecting Ricky Simone to be favored here. It was a little bit like the Jung situation. I thought Simone was going to be a small favorite, and then he was a dog, so I did take the shot on that. But I definitely do have some concerns here, and I can definitely see why some people are on the Shore side. For me, what it came down to is there's nobody quite like Ricky Simone when it comes to doggedly and repeatedly and thoroughly searching for takedowns. Here's some stats. Ricky Simone averages 6.7 takedowns per 15 minutes, which is insane. On Contender Series, he landed 14 takedowns against his opponent there. And in the UFC, he's landed 7 takedowns 3 times and 6 takedowns twice. Those are crazy numbers. Nobody really lands takedowns like that consistently. I mean, I think the most takedowns ever in one fight was it was Khabib versus Abel Trujillo, I think. And he landed like over 20. I think it was like 23 or 26 takedowns or something. Somebody correct me, look it up and put it in the comments down there, but I'm pretty sure that was the fight. And I think it was like 23 or 26. So, I mean, there have been fights where things like that have happened, but as far as consistently, as far as averaging more than 6 per fight, as far as getting 7 takedowns 3 times, 6 takedowns 2 times, I mean, those are crazy numbers. So even though Jack Shore has dealt with some wrestling and has looked good against that wrestling, I think Ricky Simone is going to be, a more dogged and determined wrestler. He's going to search for those takedowns repeatedly. He's not going to give up until he gets them. And Ricky Simone is just a dog. I think he's very athletic. I think he's very powerful. I think he's very strong. And there were moments, and I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but there were moments I saw in the Jack Shore versus Timur Valiev fight where it looked to me like Valiev was able to out-muscle him in spots so, obviously, like, technique matters a lot, but when you have a situation where the technique is somewhat even and one person is stronger, that is going to make a difference. And I saw some moments in the wrestling and clinching with Shore and Valiev where I thought Valiev was able to out-muscle him, and I think Ricky Simone will be able to do the same. I think it's a close fight. And I can understand why some people are on the Shore side, but I did end up taking the shot on Simone here at plus 150. I'll be interested to see where this line goes if it continues to move. And yeah, like I said, I only went 1 unit on it because I'm not super confident, but I just thought getting that plus 150 on Ricky Simone was worth a shot. So hopefully he comes through for us here. Next up, we've got Pune Hele Soriano versus Dolce Lungiambula. This is one of those fights that, like, I don't know, like, I don't really have any interest in betting this fight. This is just kind of a little bit of a freak matchup. Not like you'd see in the Pride days or whatever, but I guess let me explain what I mean. I don't think highly of Dolce Lungiambula's skill set really at all. I think he's one of those guys. If you already watched Couch Warriors show this week, you're going to hear me say a lot of the same things. I'm going to be repeating myself, so I apologize. But you know how, like, if a really physically strong guy starts training in BJJ, and he's able to muscle techniques. He maybe doesn't have to learn the intricate details of a technique because he's able to just muscle his way through it. So, and then a smaller, weaker guy isn't able to muscle his way through the techniques, so he has to learn the little intricate details that make the technique really work. For me, Dolce Lungiambula is a guy who is so strong and so athletic that it has been to the detriment of him really developing a full and complete and deep MMA game because he's been able to just rely on that athleticism. Obviously, he has high-level judo. He's able to find those judo throws, but he doesn't have much of a top game. He can't really keep people down. He relies so heavily on using his explosiveness and his athleticism to try to find a finish early that he gasses himself out and doesn't have much later in the fight. I don't think highly of his MMA game overall, and the only way I can really see Dolce winning this fight is catching Pune with a big punch in a wild exchange, which, not like that can't happen. We know Dolce's powerful, but Pune also has a good chin and can take a shot. Puna's the betting line here. Puna's at minus 270, which seems pretty high to me, and Dolce can be had for plus 220. I think if you like a bet on Dolce, I mean, he's already at plus 220, which is a pretty good number. But if you like a bet on Dolce, I think you got to bet him by KO or inside the distance. I can't see him winning a decision here. I think Pune has the more complete game. Pune, like I said, Dolce has the takedowns, the judo throws, but he doesn't really have a top game. Pune has wrestling. He has a top game. He has the ability to hold someone down. If this fight plays out mostly on the feet, it could be wild. Dolce could find that big punch, but I see Pune probably looking to want to use his wrestling, to probably want to try to control Dolce, to try to make the fight take place in an area where Dolce is not as dangerous. I don't like, I definitely don't like Puna's money line here. I wouldn't even parlay him, I guess, at the line he's at right now. But the line that I kind of had in my head was like minus 180. If he got down to around there, I would potentially look at betting him or parlaying him. But and another bet that a lot of people are on here is the under, or the fight doesn't go to decision, which I guess, yeah, I don't mind that. But part of me could see this going to decision, even though it's one of those weird situations where both guys are great finishers and are really powerful. I don't know. I don't have a strong feeling on that. This fight is overall a stay away from me, but it should be pretty fun. Next up, we've got Lauren Murphy versus Miesha Tate. Lauren Murphy is the slight underdog at plus 145. Miesha Tate is the favorite at minus 170. I believe Tate is even as high as like minus 200, or even, I think, minus 220 in spots. This fight is currently where I have my biggest bet on the card. After doing the tape here, I was expecting to find Miesha Tate at like minus 200 or so. And I pulled her up and saw her at minus 165. So I put 3 units on that. I thought the line was going to move pretty quickly. And then I think later that same day, I saw her at minus 160, an even better line. So I put 2 more units down. So I've got 5 units on her, which is a big bet for me. I've been moving toward that a little bit more lately. Like, for a long time, I was always putting out a ton of bets and only betting like 1 or 2 units. I've been trying a little more to, like, rather than using the shotgun, using the sniper rifle, like finding the spots I really like and putting more on them. I haven't really completely moved into that because old habits die hard, but I'm trying to do that a little bit more. But anyway, my read on this fight, I think Lauren Murphy is a fighter who really relies on her strength. I think she relies on being able to overpower her opponents. She has an overall solid MMA game, but she doesn't really have any one area where her skill set really stands out, right? She's not necessarily an excellent striker. She's not an excellent wrestler. She's not an excellent grappler. She's just pretty good at all of those things and is tough and gritty and strong. And I think that when she's in a situation where she can't rely on her grittiness and her strength to overpower her opponents, she's in a little bit more trouble there. I think, you know, to state it frankly, I think Miesha Tate is the better fighter everywhere. I think she's just technically better than Lauren Murphy. And I also think that I don't know if she can match Lauren Murphy's strength. You know, with strength, when you get right down to it, we're really just kind of guessing. You know, when I hear a capper say, well, this person is stronger than this person, we don't really know that. You know, we can watch things that happen in the cage and we can see what appears to be someone's strength, but, you know, there's always technique involved as well. And of course, you know, sometimes somebody looks at how muscular someone is and says, oh, that person's very strong. And, you know, those of you who've spent time in the gym or whatever, you know this already, but muscles don't always equal strength. Sometimes somebody who looks a lot weaker is a lot stronger. Let's use Tito Ortiz as an example. Not that Tito's not a fit, buff guy, he is, but he's not a big muscle monster by any means. If you look at Tito's body, he's a guy who's fit, but a little bit more slender, you know, not a huge bricked up guy. And when he was in the game, you know, in his prime, you know, like in the late 90s and into the early and mid 2000s, so many fighters that fought Tito said how incredibly strong he was. He was just a guy who had a ton of natural strength and, you know, didn't look like a big bodybuilder or anything. So yeah, that doesn't always tell the story just looking at somebody. Sorry, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but like I said, overall, I think Tate's the better fighter everywhere. You know, she used to not have a great striking game. She still doesn't have a great striking game, but, you know, after coming back from her retirement, her striking has looked pretty good. It's looked good enough that she definitely feels more comfortable using it, which is nice. You know, she can use it to close the distance, to look for takedowns if she wants to clinch up and that kind of thing. And another thing to consider, okay, so normally I would probably look to fade a fighter who's 35 years old and already retired and came back. That's what we're seeing in Miesha Tate. But Lauren Murphy is 38 years old. Lauren Murphy turns 39 later this month. She will turn 39 like 2 weeks after this fight takes place or something. So, like, you know, it's like, oh, I got to fade the 35-year-old fighter. Well, not when she's across the ring from essentially a 39-year-old fighter who, and another thing with Lauren Murphy, she has admitted openly herself that she's never been a great athlete. You know, she's strong, but she's not particularly quick or agile, or, you know, she's not a particularly athletic person besides her strength. And I think Miesha Tate is the better athlete as well. So yeah, I do like Miesha Tate here quite a bit. Like I said, I bet her at -160 and -165. She's at -170 now. I'd probably still bet her there. Like I said, I was willing to cap her at around -200. So if you can get a better line than that, I think she is a pretty good bet, if you agree with my read. All right, next up, we've got Shane Burgos versus Charles Jourdain. This fight, more than anything, I just think this fight is going to be a lot of fun. You know, sometimes there's a fight where I'm just like, I don't even really want to make a call here. I don't want to have a bet on this fight. Like, I just want to hang out and watch it and have fun. And that's kind of where I'm at with this one. Shane Burgos is a favorite at -190. Come back on Charles Jourdain at +160. And I think I agree with those lines for the most part. It could maybe be a little bit closer, but you know, both of these guys are just absolute dogs. You know, both of these guys, they don't put on boring fights. You know, this is going to be a fun fight. Both of these guys like to come out and bang. And I don't mean that they're like, you know, they're wild, chaotic brawlers necessarily. They're capable of doing that in moments. They both like to come out there and get after it, but they're good, you know, pretty good, tight technical strikers as well. One thing I want to share that stood out to me on this fight is the striking stats. Shane Burgos attempts 15.1 significant strikes per minute and lands 7.9. Those are among the best offensive striking stats that I can remember seeing since I've started, you know, doing this and paying attention to this. I've seen up as high as like 17 significant strikes attempted, and I can't remember who that was. But yeah, numbers like 15 and landing 7.9, those are numbers that you just don't see. Those are fantastic numbers. Jourdain also attempts 11.3 and lands 5.6, which is also pretty good. You know, not up there with Burgos, but it's decent. I do like Burgos in this fight. You know, he's got a 6.5-inch reach advantage for one thing. Burgos is massive. He's a huge guy. Like, if it's almost unbelievable to me. You know, there are certain fighters that when you see them in the cage, obviously they've rehydrated. They're, you know, he probably weighs 20, 25 pounds more by the time he gets in the cage. But even so, there are certain fighters that I just look at them and I just can't wrap my head around them being in the weight class that they're in. Shane Burgos is one of them. Another one is Michel Pereira fighting at 170. I think that guy looks like a 205er. But yeah, Burgos he's a huge bricked up guy that if you showed me a picture of Shane Burgos and said, this guy weighs 145 pounds, how tall do you think he is? I'd be like 5'2". I don't know. And he's 5'11". He's a big guy and somehow manages to make 145. Anyway. So yeah, he's going to have a 6.5 inch reach advantage. He's the bigger guy who puts out more output, that reach advantage. He has more power. So yeah, I do like Shane Burgos here, but we have seen Shane Burgos get caught and finished. He had that weird finish where Edson Barboza caught him. Was it a right hook? I can't remember what he caught him with exactly. And then Burgos kind of, he looked fine for a minute. And then all of a sudden, a few seconds later, he just stumbled and fell. It was a real weird, delayed reaction kind of thing. And Burgos was knocked out one other time, but I can't remember who it was. Drop it in the comments for me if you remember who it was. I'm not going to pull it up right now, but so yeah, we have seen Burgos get finished, but he is a tough guy. He can take a shot typically. So yeah, oh wait, hold on. I think I did put a bet on. Oh yeah. Okay, I did bet this fight because this is one of those spots where both guys are capable of getting finishes, but both guys are pretty tough and don't get finished that often. I did bet the over 2.5 here. I got it at -130. I don't know what that's at now, but if Burgos's line got down to like, I don't know, -150 or something, I might look at betting him. But for now, I just bet that over, and I'm going to stay away from betting a side. But I think this fight is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Next up, we're already 36 minutes in. I've got 4 fights left. Let's get through it. Next up, we've got Matt Schnell versus Sumudaerji. I still don't really understand if that's all one name, or sometimes you see it as split up into 2 names. Anyway, Sumudaerji, pretty big favorite at -250 here to come back on Matt Schnell at +200. This is a fight where, you know, Matt Schnell is a guy I think he has like 8 submission finishes or something like that. He's a guy who is good at getting submissions, and I know I've seen some people on the submission prop here or on Matt Schnell to win, and that's how they think he's going to do it. I just have a hard time seeing how this fight ends up in a situation where he's able to get the decision or get the submission, excuse me. Matt Schnell doesn't really look to actively wrestle all that often. He is a very solid boxer as well, of course. The only way I can really see this getting into a situation where Schnell is able to find a submission is if he knocks Sumudaerji down and follows him to the ground, or if Sumudaerji knocks Matt Schnell down and follows him to the ground, which I would kind of hope he wouldn't do, or if he did, at least wouldn't step into the guard and hang out there. But anyway, my overall read on this fight, Sumudaerji is these guys are about the same height, and Sumudaerji has 2 inches of reach on him, so a little bit, you know, it's not a whole lot, but the way Sumudaerji fights, he moves really, really well. He stays on the outside. He kind of lunges in and lands his shots. I think Matt Schnell is going to have trouble getting to Sumudaerji. I think he's going to have trouble closing that distance and being able to land his shots. And we've seen Schnell, when he's having trouble with that, we've seen him get frustrated and just kind of lunge in with big kind of combo, like open combos where he's sort of loose and open and has his chin in the air and isn't really defending himself because he's getting a little frustrated and is just trying to get at him. And Sumudaerji is a very good counter striker. He's a sniper on the feet where he can really find that spot and get that punch in there. And I think that if Schnell does get frustrated and starts kind of lunging ahead with those big combos, I think Sumudaerji is going to be able to snipe him probably. You know, we've seen Schnell. He has a little bit of a questionable chin. We've seen him get caught. We've seen him get knocked out. And that's kind of how I see it playing out, is boxing on the feet. You know, both guys are getting their licks in, but Sumudaerji is getting the better of it. And then Schnell starts coming in with those blitzes, and Sumudaerji just, boom, catches him probably with a hook right on the jaw and drops him. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't really like that -250 money line on Sumudaerji, because while I do favor him, I think that the fight could play out more closely than that. I don't, people who are taking a shot on Matt Schnell at +200, I don't hate that. I'm not personally going to do it, but I can understand why you would. One prop that I was interested in this fight that, when I did the tape, the props weren't out yet. And I made a note, hey, check out Sumudaerji's KO prop when it comes out. When it came out, it was only at plus 110, which I don't love. So I haven't bet that. Fight doesn't go the distance is at minus 125, or it was. So I typed these notes a couple days ago. Some of these might not be accurate anymore, but fight doesn't go the distance was at a pretty decent number. That's one I wouldn't mind looking at. But for now, I am not betting anything on this fight, but I like Sumudaerji by KO. Next up, we've got the Leech Li Jingliang versus Muslim Salikhov. Salikhov is the favorite at minus 175. Come back on Li Jingliang at plus 150. My overall read on this fight is I see it playing out mostly on the feet. We could see Li Jingliang look to use his grappling a little. If he does, I don't know that he's going to have success. Salikhov does have a pretty good takedown defense. I feel like it's probably going to play out mostly on the feet. Li Jingliang does put out the better output of the two. He's going to have the better volume. Salikhov can be a little bit inactive on the feet at times, but Salikhov, when he lands impressively. He lands very hard. He lands the kind of strikes that look good to the fans, look good to the judges, have more of a visual impact. So I do like Salikhov in this fight, but the line that I liked the most here was, and I don't know if this is accurate anymore, but last I looked, Li Jingliang by decision was plus 425. I do think this fight probably goes the distance. And like I said, I think Li Jingliang will be putting out the better output. Maybe landing more strikes, definitely will be throwing more strikes probably. And so I think my read on it is it's going to be one of those fights where it comes down to, we've definitely seen, the one that always comes to mind is Rob Font versus Chito Vera. We've definitely seen fights where one guy is putting out way more output, landing way more strikes, but the other guy, even though he's landing fewer, he's landing the harder, more impactful strikes, and the decision goes his way. That's one way to read this fight. I do think Li Jingliang will be throwing more strikes, probably will be landing more, but Salikhov will be landing the better strikes that have the more impact. So if my read is correct on that, and this goes to decision, it's really going to come down to what the judges are liking. Which judges are on, and do they prefer volume, or do they prefer power? So yeah, I like it to go to decision. I lean Salikhov, but that money line, or excuse me, that line on Li Jingliang by decision at plus 425 is definitely tempting. I know Couch Warrior, I was on his show this week, he got that bet at like plus 460, which I think is great. I haven't put anything on this yet, but I might still, because I do like that plus 425. All right, just a couple fights left, gang. Next up, we've got Michelle Waterson versus Amanda Lemos. This is our co-main event of the evening. I think this is an interesting fight. Amanda Lemos has a reputation as a bit of a killer, a bit of a power striker. Waterson has a reputation as a bit more of a pitter patter striker who, she does have some submissions on her record, but she's, going to go to decision more often than not. Lemos is a huge favorite here at minus 400. Come back on Michelle Waterson at plus 300. I initially watching the tape, this is why I like to check the stats a lot of the time, because I end up being wrong about, my eyes tell me one thing and then I check the stats and I'm like, oh, okay, I may not have been quite accurate on that. But I thought that Waterson would have the better striking output numbers, but when I looked it up, Lemos actually has the better output and the better accuracy on the feet. But even if Waterson does have the better volume here, kind of the same thing I just said about the Li Jingliang, Muslim Salikhov, even if Waterson does have better output here, Lemos, I think, will be landing the harder, more impactful strikes. She's a power striker. Waterson, one strike that Waterson has that I really like that has a lot of power on her, she throws that side kick a lot. A lot of times she throws it to the body or to the legs just to push you back, to keep distance. That's kind of her distance weapon. But she'll throw it to the face sometimes too. She'll all of a sudden snap a quick side kick out and just sidekick you right in the chin or right in the jaw. And I mean, that could be a knockout strike if she lands it right, certainly. Excuse me. I know a lot of people I've seen some people liking a shot on Waterson here because of the possibility that she will look to wrestle and grapple. One thing that concerned me a little bit with the numbers there, Waterson has only 29% takedown accuracy and Lemos has 89% takedown defense. However, you never want to trust the stats too much. You always want to look into the details to see, as the sample sizes certainly matter. Lemos has been taken down only once by Angela Hill, and she's only had 9 total takedown attempts against her, I believe. So it's not a huge sample size, but And another thing to think about here is that Waterson has shown that she can go a full 25 minutes without slowing down. You know, she's capable of, even in round 5, even deep into round 5, she's still fighting hard. She's still throwing strikes. She's still attempting takedowns. We've seen that from her. We know she can do that. We don't know that about Lemos. And Lemos is a fighter that throws everything really hard, that loads up on her strikes. We know that that can tire a fighter out, you know, especially, you know, Waterson has good movement. Waterson is evasive, you know, especially if Lemos is attempting big strikes, loading up on them and missing a lot. That could definitely tire her out. So yeah, it's an interesting fight. I do favor Lemos to win, but I don't favor her at minus 400 type level. This is a fight where this is a dog or pass situation to me. I actually kind of wish I think the line on Waterson has moved a little bit. She was like better than plus 300 when I finished the tape. And I think she's more like plus 270 or something like that on the books that I have access to. I kind of wish I would have just bet her right away. The reason I didn't bet her right away though, really is because I wanted to see her decision prop, because I was interested in Waterson by decision. And then when it came out on my, I live in Nevada, so I'm not able to use FanDuel and DraftKings, which usually have the best lines on props. I have to use Bet Online for my props. And when it opened, Waterson by decision was only plus 400. I know Couch Warrior got Waterson by decision at plus 700. That must have been on FanDuel or DraftKings. I would have bet that in a heartbeat. But the plus 400 was like, it's just not juicy enough for me, really. There's a chance that I'm still going to bet Waterson here. I'm hoping that people will throw Lemos and parlays late, and maybe we'll get a little bit better line on Waterson right before the event starts, but I will definitely be keeping an eye on that. And finally, your main event of the evening. Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. Ortega's the favorite at minus 165. Come back on Rodriguez plus 140. I usually try not to do this, gang, but this is one of those spots where I actually put a bet on this fight before I did the tape. Like a few weeks back, I saw Ortega was at minus 160. And like I said, this is before I'd run the tape, and I favored him quite a bit. And I was like, man, that seems like a pretty good line. Plus, how often have we seen lately the kind of line movement where a favorite becomes a huge favorite, like for example, that 10 unit bet I made on Damon Jackson versus Dan Argueta. When I finished the tape on that and pulled it up, I saw Damon Jackson at minus 280, and I put the biggest bet I've ever put on that, 10 units, which is a huge bet. Luckily it won. But yeah, minus 280. By the time the fight started, closing line on him was like minus 850 or something. You know, that was a situation where Dan Argueta was making his debut and it was short notice and stuff. So that's part of the reason that happened. But we've been seeing that a lot. So this is a situation where I was like, without doing the tape, my initial read is that minus 160 is a good line on Brian Ortega. So I'm going to take that. But I also think Brian Ortega's line is going to swell and probably give me the opportunity to hedge out for some guaranteed profit on Yair Rodriguez if I end up changing my mind about this bet. However, the line hasn't really moved that much. Ortega's still sitting around minus 160. You know, I always hate to like oversimplify a fight into a striker versus grappler matchup, as these guys are both reasonably well-rounded mixed martial artists, but let's be honest, that's kind of what it is, right? Ortega has improved his striking quite a bit, but I still think he's going to be, he's going to be at a disadvantage there against Rodriguez, who is, he's an excellent leg kicker, an excellent kicker in general, just has a very diverse skill set on the feet. I think he's going to be able to eat up Ortega's legs. I just think he's going to be the better striker there. Brian Ortega's striking numbers. Let me think. Do I have this in front of me here? Okay, yeah. Ortega lands 4.15 significant strikes per minute, and he absorbs 6.7. That's a lot of damage. Yair, on the other hand, lands 4.65, so he lands half a significant strike more per minute, and he absorbs 4.09. So Yair is landing half a significant strike more per minute, and he's absorbing more than 2.5 fewer. So yeah, sorry, the way I explained it was confusing. Brian Ortega is getting hit significantly more than 2.5 times per minute more than Yair Rodriguez. So he's absorbing, almost 3 more strikes per minute. So, and I bet a lot of that has to do with the Volkanovski fight, because he obviously got beat up quite a lot in that fight. So that might have swayed the numbers somewhat. But anyway, my point being that on the feet, I think Yair Rodriguez will get the better of it. I would like Ortega here a lot if I trusted him to really push the wrestling. He's not a great takedown artist. He's not a great wrestler. He's one of those guys that He's one of those guys that is excellent on the ground, but not always so great at getting the fight to the ground. If I was confident that Ortega was going to push to get this fight to the ground and that he was going to be able to get it there, I would put all the units on him, because I think, just like how I just talked about what I believe Yair Rodriguez's advantages will be on the feet. As much as I feel like Rodriguez has an advantage on the feet, I think Ortega has even more of an advantage on the ground. We saw Rodriguez get absolutely dominated in the grappling by Max Holloway in their fight. And if Max Holloway can do that to you, imagine what Brian Ortega can probably do to you. So yeah, overall, I do like Ortega here. I do feel like the odds are probably pretty accurate, though. So, if you're one of those just pick the winner and bet on it betters, and you think Ortega is going to win here, then yeah, minus 165 is a fine line to go for. The way I like to bet, I don't know that there's much value on that line necessarily, because I think it's pretty accurate. But like I said, I already have a bet on him because I placed it ahead of time. So I'm going to ride with that because that's where I'm locked in. All right, that's it, folks. That's all 12 fights for, I guess they're calling it UFC on ABC3, UFC Long Island. Let's take a look at the bets I've got. Wait, where am I at here? Sorry, I got to scroll. There we go. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to make that a little bigger on the screen. I just want to run through my bets that I've got for the card so far. Like I said, I've got 5 units total on Miesha Tate. I put 3 on her at minus 165, and then I put another 2 at minus 160. I did put 1 unit on Ricky Simone at plus 150, and I went a little bit crazy on Da Un Jung there. Like I said, that was a spot where I was like, I think this guy should be favored like a decent amount, maybe like minus 150 or something. He's plus 125, and that just seemed like a spot I should go a little heavier on. I'm a little bit nervous about that because I don't feel as good about that bet as I did when I made it, but the 3 units are there and we're riding with it. I also put 1 unit on Waterson Lemos to go over 2.5 rounds. I put 1.3 units on Burgos Jourdain to go over 2.5 rounds. And then I put together a little bit of a parlay here, a little bit of a crazy one. Sumudaerji, Punahele Soriano, Miesha Tate, Brian Ortega, Muslim Salikhov, and Shane Burgos. I put half a unit on that at plus 1131. That's all I've got right now. Like I said, there's some spots I'm still looking at. Please check me out on Twitter at Erik Bets Fights to see potential updates on my bets. Also, what we're looking at right here is betmma.tips. You can find my profile there at betmma.tips/ErikBlock, and that's ErikBlock. I always post all my bets there for free, so feel free to take a look at that anytime if you want to see what I am betting on. That's going to do it, folks, for the betting breakdown for UFC Long Island, headlined by Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. I hope you enjoyed the show. As always, folks, please make sure to like this video. Leave a comment down below. That helps the algorithms get going. Make sure you subscribe to the Never Hedge Media YouTube channel. If you enjoy my content, also make your way over to Erik Bets Fights YouTube channel and subscribe there. As far as where you can catch me every week, all right, I'm going to run through my shows real quick here. Let's see. Every Tuesday, I put out a show called Mixed Martial Smarts, which is a UFC trivia show. I put that out right here on the Never Hedge Media channel. Wednesdays, I do my full card breakdown, which is the one I'm doing right now. I put that out on the Never Hedge Media channel. Thursdays on the Erik Bets Fights channel, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, I do a live show called Big Money Bets, where I bring on a sharp guest every week, and we go through our favorite props and parlays. This week, I've got Dan Tom from MMA Junkie. Very excited about that. I'm a big fan of his. So that's this week, which would be tomorrow night right now, whenever you're watching this. But yeah, Thursday, July 14th at 7 p.m. Pacific on the Erik Bets Fights channel. Coming up later this month, I've also got Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast coming on, and I've got Gordo Gambles coming on. And then after that, I think Kyle Miller, the man behind Never Hedge right here, will be coming on the show as well. And then you can also find me every Saturday on the DFS by the Numbers YouTube channel. I do a show called Best Bet. There's a panel of 4 of us. It's me, Uncle Wheezy, Narco Cop, and Brady from DFS by the Numbers. That show starts 1 hour before we do it every Saturday that there's a UFC event, and it starts 1 hour before the prelims kick off. So the idea is we go through the entire card, we give you our favorite bet for each fight, and then our show ends just as the prelims kick off. So it's a great last stop to get your DGen betting action in before the card begins. Whew. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you so much for watching, folks. I am Erik with Erik Bets Fights, reminding you to play it safe, play it smart, and let's grow those bankrolls. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and make sure to check out and enjoy the fights at UFC Long Island this weekend. We'll see you next